The crystal chandeliers of the Harrington Grand Ballroom glittered like 1,000 accusations. Lila Harrington stood at the edge of the stage, her emerald silk gown clinging to her like a noose. At 24, she was the perfect East Coast heiress, poised, polished, and utterly trapped. Tonight was supposed to be the announcement of her engagement to Damien Voss, the ruthless heir to Voss Media and Finance. Her parents, Victor and Eleanor Harrington, had orchestrated it for months. Old money meeting newer billions. A merger disguised as love. Her stomach twisted as the spotlight swung toward her. Damien's smirk from the front row felt like a blade. She couldn't breathe. The ring in his pocket would chain her to a life of calculated smiles and cold sheets. In a surge of panic, Lila bolted. She shoved through the French doors into the humid Manhattan night, heels clicking across the service courtyard. A catering van sat crooked under the loading lights, its hood open. A man in grease-stained coveralls leaned over the engine, broad shoulders flexing under a faded flannel shirt. Grease streaked his jaw. His dark hair fell across his forehead as he tightened a bolt. He looked up, steady gray eyes meeting hers. Quiet, unassuming, nothing like the sharks inside. Without thinking, Lila grabbed his collar, pulled him close, and kissed him hard. His lips were warm, surprised. For one stunned second he froze. Then his hand brushed her waist instinctively before she yanked back. "Come with me," she whispered, voice shaking. She dragged him through the doors into the blazing ballroom. The music died. 500 elite faces turned. Lila's grip on the stranger's arm tightened. "This is my boyfriend," she announced, voice ringing clear. "Ethan, we're in love." Laughter exploded. Whispers rippled like wildfire. "A mechanic?" someone hissed. Damien's face purpled. Victor Harrington's jaw locked. Eleanor pressed a hand to her pearls. Ethan Cole stood there in oil-smudged boots, blinking under the chandeliers. He was tall, solid, the kind of man who fixed things instead of breaking them for sport. From a small town in rural Pennsylvania, he'd only taken the van repair gig because his buddy's catering company needed help. Now this hurricane of a woman had kissed him and claimed him in front of New York's finest. Security moved in. Lila's eyes pleaded. "Please," she mouthed. "1 month. Just pretend." Ethan saw the terror behind her perfect makeup. He didn't know her world, but he knew fear when he saw it. "Yeah," he said quietly, voice carrying that faint Appalachian lilt. "I'm her boyfriend." The room erupted again, mocking, delighted at the scandal. Lila's parents rushed them backstage. Victor's voice was ice. "Explain yourself." Lila spun the story. Whirlwind romance. Love at first sight. The engagement to Damien was a mistake. Ethan stood silent, arms crossed, watching her lie with surprising grace. When her parents demanded he disappear, he met Victor's glare evenly. "I'm not going anywhere unless she asks." Later, alone in a side hallway, Lila faced him. 1 month. Fake it. Help me kill the engagement. I'll pay you whatever you want. Then we walk away. No harm done. Ethan studied her. She was beautiful, yes, but it was the desperation in her green eyes that hooked him. "No money," he said. "I don't do charity cases or gold digging." 1 month. Strict rules. No real feelings. End clean. She nodded, relief flooding her. "Deal." As they stepped back into the gala, hand in hand, the laughter followed, but Lila felt something shift. His calloused palm steady against hers. Ethan felt it too, the spark that neither had expected. Outside, the catering van waited, but inside, their worlds had already collided. The next 4 weeks blurred into a delicate dance of deception. Lila introduced Ethan to brunches at the Hamptons, where her mother Eleanor wrinkled her nose at his off-the-rack button-down and called it quaint. Victor cornered him in the study one afternoon, sliding a check across the mahogany desk. 6 figures. Disappear. You're embarrassing her. Ethan folded the check neatly and slid it back. Not for sale, sir. Damien Voss was worse. At a charity polo match, he accidentally spilled champagne down Ethan's shirt, then laughed with his circle of trust fund heirs. Clean up, grease monkey. She'll come back when she remembers her place. Lila watched it all, cheeks burning. But in private, Ethan's world opened to her like a secret door. He drove her to Pennsylvania in his battered Ford truck. Windows down, country radio playing. They stopped at a roadside diner where the waitress knew him by name and served him black coffee. Without asking, Lila laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years when he taught her to eat a cheeseburger with both hands. Weekends at his family's white clapboard farmhouse felt like stepping into another century. Grace Cole, his mother, hugged Lila like she'd known her forever, pressing warm apple pie into her hands. Henry Cole, broad and quiet like his son, showed her the barn where Ethan restored old engines. He's always had good hands, Henry said, pride warm in his voice. One evening, Lila noticed the sapphire brooch pinned to Grace's simple cotton dress. It caught the kitchen light like something from a museum. Family heirloom? She asked casually. Grace smiled softly. Something like that. Later, in the dusty barn, Lila glimpsed a tarp-covered shape. She lifted a corner. Chrome gleamed. A pristine 1960s Ferrari. For tractors? She teased Ethan. He shrugged, wiping grease from his hands. Dad's hobbies. But his eyes flicked away too quickly. The fake dates deepened anyway. They fixed the Harringtons' vintage Jaguar together one rainy afternoon in the city garage. Ethan's sleeves rolled up, muscles flexing, while Lila handed him tools. Their fingers brushed. The kiss that followed wasn't for show. It tasted like motor oil and rain and something real. At night, on the farmhouse porch under starlit skies, Ethan listened as Lila confessed how suffocating her world felt. They don't see me, she whispered. Just the Harrington name. He tucked a stray hair behind her ear. I see you. She saw him too. His kindness when he volunteered at the local trade school, teaching kids to wrench engines instead of dealing drugs. His integrity when he turned down a lucrative city job to stay close to family. The emotional depth in quiet conversations about books and dreams and what really mattered. Feelings crept in despite the rules. Lila caught herself watching him sleep on the couch one night, heart aching with something far beyond pretense. Ethan fought it harder, reminding himself nightly that her world would never accept a small-town mechanic. Yet when she fell asleep against his shoulder during a drive back to Manhattan, he let himself hold her a little tighter. By the end of the month, the engagement to Damien was dead. Lila's parents seethed, but Lila and Ethan kept seeing each other. One more week, she said. Just to be sure. He nodded, but his gray eyes held a warning. The clues in the farmhouse. The heirloom jewelry. The luxury cars hidden under tarps. The farmhands, who moved like trained security, nagged at her. Something was off. Still, she pushed it down. For the first time, she felt loved for who she was, not what she represented. Lila's suspicions grew like cracks in fine porcelain. During her third weekend at the Coles farmhouse, she wandered into the study while Ethan was out back with his father. A framed photo on the desk caught her eye. Henry Cole shaking hands with a former president. Both men laughing like old golf buddies. She blinked. Surely a joke. Grace entered with fresh coffee. Everything all right, dear? Quote. Lila pointed. That's, quote. Grace's smile never wavered. Old friends. Henry's worked with a few people over the years. Later, Ethan found Lila in the barn again, staring at the uncovered Ferrari, Rolls-Royce, and a rare Porsche gleaming under work lights. These aren't hobbies, she said softly. Your parents. They're hiding something. He pulled a tarp back over the Porsche with deliberate calm. Family history. Nothing that changes us. His voice was gentle, but his jaw tightened. Trust me, Lila. Please. She wanted to. God. She wanted to. Their nights had grown intimate. Slow kisses turning hungry. His hands mapping her skin with reverence she'd never known from elite men. He made her feel safe. Real. Yet the inconsistencies piled up. The farmhands who scanned the perimeter at dusk with quiet efficiency. The heirloom jewelry Grace wore while canning tomatoes that would cost more than Lila's entire wardrobe. Back in Manhattan, pressure mounted. Victor and Eleanor hosted a strategy dinner, inviting Damien to smooth things over. Damien cornered Ethan in the hallway. You think you're playing house? She'll drop you the second the novelty wears off. You're trash. Cole. Always will be. Ethan's response was quiet steel. She's not yours to define. The breaking point came when Lila's parents announced their own charity gala. Ostensibly to support children's hospitals, but really to reassert control. Damien would attend. Whispers already circulated that Lila's phase was ending. That week, Lila visited Ethan's family again. Henry casually referenced a call from the Secretary of State while passing the potatoes. Grace's brooch sparkled under the chandelier. Lila had looked it up discreetly. It belonged in a vault worth millions. When she pressed Ethan that night on the porch swing, he cupped her face. My parents raised me away from the spotlight for a reason. When the time's right, you'll know everything. But right now, this is real. Us. That's what matters. She kissed him fiercely, pushing doubts away. Their lovemaking that night was tender and desperate, as if both sensed the storm coming. The Harrington Charity Gala arrived in a blaze of Manhattan glamour. Lila wore a silver gown that shimmered like armor. Ethan stood beside her in a rented tux that somehow looked better on him than any bespoke suit on. The room's billionaires. Cameras flashed. Damien smirked from across the room. Then chaos. Security swarmed. A priceless Harrington family necklace, diamonds and emeralds worth a small fortune, had vanished from the display vault. Planted evidence pointed straight at Ethan. Security footage of him near the area. A wrench from his truck found in a hallway closet. Damien stepped forward, voice oily with triumph. He's been casing the place for weeks. Gold Digger finally showed his hand. The room gasped. Victor demanded answers. Eleanor looked at her daughter with steel eyes. Lila froze under the weight of 1,000 stares. Ethan's gaze locked on hers. Calm. Waiting. Trusting. She hesitated. 1 heartbeat. 2. I don't know, she whispered. Security dragged him away in handcuffs. The betrayal in his eyes cut deeper than any knife. I thought you were different, he said, voice breaking the silence like glass. He disappeared that night. No calls. No trace. Lila woke to a shattered world. Ethan's number went straight to voicemail. Her texts vanished into the void. The tabloids feasted. Heiress's mechanic boyfriend arrested for theft. Damien's planted evidence held just long enough for the scandal to explode. At breakfast, Victor slammed the paper down. We warned you. Now fix it. The board is calling an emergency meeting tomorrow. Our biggest investor is pulling out. Hostile takeover threat. This is your mess. Lila. She stared at her untouched coffee. Heart hollow. She had failed him. In that one moment of silence, she had chosen approval over the man who had shown her what love could be. Tears burned, but she swallowed them. Her parents expected damage control. Instead, she drove to the Pennsylvania farmhouse alone. It was empty. Grace and Henry were gone. A note on the kitchen table in Ethan's handwriting. Don't look for me. You made your choice. The next morning, the Harringtons arrived at their sleek Manhattan headquarters for the emergency board meeting. Tailored armor in place. Victor adjusted his cufflinks. We'll negotiate. No one takes our empire. The boardroom doors opened. Lila followed her parents inside and stopped cold. Ethan sat at the head of the long mahogany table in a charcoal Tom Ford suit that fit like it was made for him. Flawless, commanding, flanked by executives in $1,000 watches, lawyers with briefcases worth more than most houses, and two discreetly armed security personnel whose posture screamed elite training. Victor's face drained of color. Eleanor gasped. Ethan's gray eyes were ice. Good morning. Please, sit. He introduced himself with quiet authority. Ethan Cole, sole heir to the Cole dynasty. Documents slid across the table. Ironclad proof. The Coles weren't rural farmers. They were one of America's most powerful hidden empires. Tech infrastructure, energy grids, vast real estate holdings, and financial tentacles that reached every corner of the country. Their net worth dwarfed the Harringtons and Vosses combined. Ethan's parents had raised him in deliberate secrecy in rural Pennsylvania, shielding him from the cutthroat world so he could find genuine love before inheriting the throne. Grace and Henry entered quietly from a side door. Grace still wearing her simple dress but now with the full weight of legacy behind her sapphire brooch. Henry nodded once to the stunned room. Victor stammered, "This is impossible." Quote. Ethan cut him off with a raised hand. Every deal propping up wearing her simple dress but now with the full weight of legacy behind her sapphire brooch. Henry nodded once to the stunned room. Victor stammered, "This is impossible." Quote. Ethan cut him off with a raised hand. Every deal propping up your empire is withdrawn as of this moment. Your loans, your partnerships, your leverage, gone. His voice never rose. It didn't need to. Damien Voss's crimes, insider trading, embezzlement, harassment, are already with the authorities. Evidence is airtight. Damien, dragged in by security moments later, turned ghostly white as cuffs clicked. Ethan stood, buttoning his jacket. Money buys influence. It never bought character. He looked straight at Lila, pain flickering beneath the ice for the first time. "I loved you when I was nobody. You couldn't love me." He looked straight at Lila, pain flickering beneath the ice for the first time. "I loved you when I was nobody. You couldn't love me back when it mattered." He walked out. The Harrington empire began to crumble in real time. Stock tickers flashing red on every screen. Lila didn't follow her parents' frantic calls. She drove through the night, rejecting every offer of wealth or status. At dawn, she arrived at the now familiar farmhouse. Rain lashed the porch. She stood soaked, trembling, a single duffel bag at her feet containing everything she owned. Ethan opened the door in jeans and a flannel shirt. The mechanic again. His eyes widened, guarded. "I gave it all up," she said, voice raw. "The money, the name, the approval. Because I loved you when you were fixing vans in the rain. I was weak that night, too scared. But I choose you. Broke or billionaire. No more pretending." He studied her, rain mingling with her tears. "Prove it." The weeks that followed tested Lila in ways Manhattan never had. No trust fund, no safety net. She worked the counter at the local diner where Ethan once took her for burgers. Learning to balance plates and smile through aching feet, she helped Grace can tomatoes in the farmhouse kitchen, hands raw from hot jars. She mucked stalls beside Henry, listening as he quietly explained the Cole philosophy. "We raised Ethan humble so he'd know real worth when he found it." Ethan watched but kept distance. Forgiveness wasn't given lightly. He made her face the town that had once pitied her as the fallen heiress. At the auto shop, she handed him tools while he restored an old truck, their hands brushing like the first time. "I failed you," she whispered one evening. "I'll spend every day making it right." He didn't reply with words. Instead, He pulled her close under the barn lights and kissed her like a man who had waited lifetimes. The turning point came at the annual Harvest Festival in the rolling Pennsylvania hills. String lights twinkled over hay bales and cider presses. Bluegrass music floated on the autumn air. The whole town gathered, kids running with caramel apples, neighbors laughing over potluck tables. Lila's parents arrived, humbled and invited by Ethan's quiet grace. Victor, tie loosened for the first time in decades, helped judge the pie contest. Eleanor rolled up her sleeves to serve cider. Awkward conversations unfolded around bonfires. We were wrong, Victor admitted to Henry, voice thick. Status blinded us. You raised a better man than we ever could. Grace smiled warmly. True wealth was never in the boardroom. Ethan found Lila at the edge of the dance floor, wearing a simple sundress and boots. He took her hand. Dance with me. Under golden lights. They swayed slowly. The music wrapped around them like forgiveness. You found me when I was nobody, he murmured against her hair. And chose me again when I was everything. She looked up, eyes shining. I never wanted the heir. I wanted the man who kissed me back that desperate night in the rain. Their families watched from the sidelines. Harringtons and Coles side by side for the first time. Laughter replaced tension. Henry clapped Victor on the back. Eleanor hugged Grace. The divide between worlds narrowed under harvest stars. Later, by the bonfire, Ethan pulled Lila aside. I forgive you, he said simply. Not because you gave up everything. Because you proved you'd do it all over again for the right reasons. She kissed him fiercely, tasting cider and smoke and forever. The story closed on that perfect autumn night. Ethan and Lila slow danced under the festival lights. Her head on his shoulder. His arms secure around her waist. No more secrets. No more pretending. The Coles empire would one day be his to lead. But tonight he was simply the mechanic who had stolen an heiress's heart. And given her something far richer in return. As fireworks lit the sky, both families toasted. True wealth, they had learned, wasn't measured in billions or boardrooms. It was in loyalty that survived humiliation. Love that crossed class lines. And the courage to value a person for who they truly were. Grease-stained coveralls or tailored suit. In the end, Lila Harrington had chosen the only thing that mattered. And Ethan Cole had found the genuine heart he'd been raised to wait for.